With us now for a closer look at the Michael Jackson case. Michael Cardoza is a criminal defense attorney, and Robert Ernenwein is a former L.A. deputy district attorney. Good to see you both. Robert, let me begin with you. The real big stunning development is police allegedly seized love letters from Michael Jackson to the boy, and they're described as explicit and intimate as evidence. How damning is that?
Corroboration. It's terrible for the defense. Anytime you have a one-on-one situation, it's a he said, she said, or in this case a he said situation, proof beyond a reasonable doubt is difficult. If, however, you have corroborative evidence, letters written by Michael Jackson or sexually explicit in nature, very damaging to the defense, because that's the corroboration a jury's looking for.
Speaking of damning evidence, Michael, there's another damning bit of new evidence that has come out. The 12-year-old boy allegedly told prosecutors the following. We'll quote this.
All right.
He said Jackson called him Rubba because one of the games they used to play was Rubba Dubba. Rubba, I should say. The boy said Michael told me he was my Rubba friend. Now, look, pedophiles often make touching or rubbing a kind of game because they're trying to lend it some legitimacy and attractiveness to the victim. What do you say to jurors if that's true?
Well, Michael's certainly going to have to explain that to the jury, which means he has to get on the stand. It almost forces him on the stand, because you leave that hanging out there as a defense attorney, you're in big trouble, just like with those letters.
Yeah. Robert, Jackson may have tried to flee the jurisdiction. You know, he's on his way to Santa Barbara. He's agreed with prosecutors to turn himself in. Suddenly he tells the pilots, go to South America. In fact, let me quote here. The Sunday Mirror, trembling and swaying, he ordered aides to change his plane flight path and spring him to a haven beyond the reach of U.S. law. Flunkies refused for fear the U.S. air control would force the jet down by knocking out its satellite navigation systems. Now, again, assuming this is true and that people in the cabin there can testify to this, flight is, under California law, evidence of consciousness of guilt. It is admissible, isn't it?
That's correct. In fact, the jury would be instructed that if there was evidence that prior to the beginning of the criminal proceedings, the defendant evidenced or engaged in flight or an attempt to flee the jurisdiction, to flee the charges, the jury, if that evidence is believed, can accept that as a consciousness of guilt. That is, that if the defendant were truly not guilty, he would not have engaged in that type of behavior.
Michael, everybody knows Michael Jackson paid anywhere from $20 to $35 million to a 13-year-old boy a decade ago to settle identical claims of sex abuse. Look, whoever you have on this jury, they're going to know it. Everybody in the world knows Jackson paid that other kid off. They'll likely conclude, hey, nobody pays $20 to $35 million unless you're guilty of something, trying to buy the victim's silence. Might that consciously or subconsciously influence these forthcoming jurors in the trial of Michael Jackson against him?
Oh, absolutely, if they know about it. I mean, that's where voir dire comes in, the jury selection. That's where Garagos will have to earn his money. You have to find out from the jurors before they are selected, do you know anything about Michael Jackson, i.e. the 93 case? You certainly want to know, if they know, what are their feelings about that. So, and you're going to have an explanation for it, too, should that evidence get in, because they're going to try and get it in as a prior similar.
Look, Michael, you're a terrific defense attorney. Would you be concerned that Mark Garagos, who's got too much on his plate, here he is defending Scott Peterson? By the way, most polls indicate he is the most hated person in the state of California for allegedly killing his pregnant wife. Jurors are going to identify Peterson with Garagos.
Well,
doesn't that put Jackson at a disadvantage?
Yeah, it certainly does. It's something that Jackson should have considered before he hired Garagos. Garagos is an excellent criminal defense attorney, and he certainly can do both defenses, but it's something that Jackson should be concerned with, because the jurors are going to think, oh, high-profile attorney, you must be guilty. You're trying to buy your way out of this one, too, with a high-powered lawyer.
Yeah. All right, Robert Ernenwein and Michael Cardoza. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.